Fine.
That's insane.
That was dumb as
bro.
fuck. What I just saw was dumb as fuck.
Iron Fist got a lot of changes recently, and a lot of people have been up in arms about whether this is a buff or nerf and why. I'm going to thoroughly explain why this is a massive buff and how you're actually supposed to play him now. Especially with some changes most people have slept on, I think he's actually crazy if you abuse the new mechanics. He's also gotten a brand new mobility buff in his ult. I'm first gonna go over each change and how each affected him, as well as going into the numbers to see how exactly this impacted his survivability and, more importantly, his damage per second. Then I'm going to talk about how this drastically changes his playstyle, greatly aided by one seemingly inconsequential buff, which most people seem to skip over. I absolutely fell in love with his new playstyle. It's actually really interesting now. And then finally, a new seemingly unintended bug that makes your ult a lot more powerful. I have no idea whether this is intended or if it will be patched out soon. Firstly, it's sad to say, but the bunny hub tag is mostly gone now. If you don't know what it is, I made a video about it that you can check out. There used to be a tag where you could attack and jump at the same time when hitting the ground, allowing you to keep double jumping indefinitely for like a lot more horizontal momentum. This got removed this patch. Or well, it's still possible, but a lot more inconsistent to the point that it doesn't really feel worth to try and pursue. If anyone finds a consistent way of doing it, let me know. First, the very clear buffs. He got 50 more base health. This helps you in every single situation, but especially in 1v1s, as it literally takes the enemy 20% more time to kill you. It matters less in team fights, where everyone gets healed to full anyway. This meditate now allows you to overheal for up to 150 health instead of 50. This is a big buff, but with a minor but important downside. It starts decaying over time instead of staying there permanently. This means you can't just meditate and spawn or long before fights, as it'll be gone by the time the fight actually starts. So start meditating like 3 seconds before the fights, so you're not missing out on any of the fight, but you're also at the full 450 HP. With the base HP buff and this one combined, you now start fights with 450 instead of 300 health now. This is massive and means it's a lot easier to win isolated duels where no healers are involved. You don't really need to be as scared of an Iron Man lasering you down with the team up, as you have a whole 150 health extra to make use of. That said, it will still be wheeled down quickly in team fights and isn't sustainable, as you can't just meditate in the middle of fighting. A small point here as well is that your meditate can only heal up to 300 health. The over health is also included in that. This means that if you are below 150 health before you start meditating, you can't actually heal to the full 450 health. But before we go any further, did you know that 0% of my subscribers are subscribed to me? I'm just saying, this is your chance. His normal primary fire did get a flat out nerf. His normal attacks each went from 32 to 30 damage, while his final attack went from 55 to 50 damage. Now, I don't actually think this is a big deal, because it doesn't really change the thresholds of when you can kill someone with your kick. And I mostly use his primary fire now to evade and block anyway. It's not really a high DPS tool. And the thing is, enemies would be able to out-heal your damage anyways. So if they're getting healed, you can't kill them anyway. If they're not getting healed, you can kill them anyway. It doesn't really change that dynamic. The big controversial change of this patch is the empowered primary fire he gets after block, which I'll refer to as flurry now. You can punch up to 7 times a second, which deals 19 damage each. Now, however, it deals 10 damage plus 1.7% of the opponent's max health. So I've taken the opportunity to do the math for you guys, because 1.7% might not be that clear. Firstly, just know that he now deals less damage to any target with a health pool smaller than 530 health, and more damage to any target with a health pool larger than 530. Basically, versus any tank or someone like Mr. Fantastic, he deals more damage, while he actually deals less damage versus any normal squishy support or duelist. If people want to know the exact numbers, here they are. Versus someone with 250 health, the lowest standard health, his punches will do 14.25 damage each. Versus Groot, who has one of the highest health pools in the game at 850, his punches will deal 24.45 damage each. There are characters like Hulk or Venom etc. who can go even higher than that, but that's not a realistic scenario in most cases. Let's put this in terms of damage per second. He dealt 19 times 7 is 133 damage per second before the patch. He deals 14.25 times 7 equals 99.75 damage per second versus 250 health targets now. And he deals 24.45 times 7 equals 171.15 damage per second versus 850 health targets now. This is a pretty big nerf versus squishies and a pretty big buff versus tanks. A caveat here though is that you won't be dealing this damage anyway, as going too far from an enemy will interrupt your punches and force you to dash them, lowering your DPS. Immobile targets with shields like Doctor Strange and Magneto are perfect for this, as they can't get away fast enough and you can punch through their shield, so you get the full damage. That said, healers will usually be able to out-heal your damage anyway, so it's usually still better to attack the healers if the situation allows you to. I'll go further into that later, but just note this affects your fights versus squishies and tanks. Versus tanks, they're so strong, you can't kill them even though you're doing a lot of DPS, so it's better to go on healers. For squishies, back to the other thing, sure you dealt more DPS beforehand, but if someone was healing them, they would still live anyway. And now, if no one is healing them, you're still killing them anyway, so this doesn't really change any of the matchups. Now, onto the two changes that I think contribute the most to his gameplay change. The maximum health he can gain from block went from 150 to 200. As he now can get block up multiple times while staying in the fight, this actually gives him a constant source of sustain. And if you think 200 damage is too hard to block, yeah, that's fair, you're probably right. But block's conversion rate is actually 1.5 and not 1. So you only need to take 130 damage in the block to get the full 200 health. The other block change is that your normal primary attacks, so not the flurry ones, reduce your block cooldown by 1.5 seconds each, instead of by 1 second. Combined with the block HP, you can actually just cycle your attack to permanently stay in the fight and keep getting your block back up. Get block health, dash around, reduce your block cooldown, get block health again. Whereas before, a lot of the time, you couldn't afford to stay in the fight because you'd run out of health before your block got back up. So now you have more health and your block gets up sooner. So back then, you had to sit there for 15 seconds every time to get your cooldowns back up. Now I did find some success with Tank Iron Fist previously, as I made a video about it previously, but you dealt a lot less damage versus tanks, and you didn't really have enough sustain, so it was more of a situational thing. Sometimes you flank, sometimes you tank, right? Now, however, you don't always need to hit and run most of the time. You can actually choose because you have enough sustain to stay in fights. A big thing for actually pulling off this playstyle though, is to swap up where you're dashing with your primary fire. If you just hold primary fire on one enemy, they get the easiest shots of their life as you're just moving towards them. Your mega pulse will not matter if you're just getting headshot twice in a row by any character. What you need to do is to keep swapping targets. Dash to one target, turn around, swap to a different target, dash to them, dash to them, dash to them, dash to them. Just be everywhere all at once and get your cooldown back up, get health, and then you can start smacking someone again. This all gives you time for your block to get back up while reducing its cooldown while making you a lot harder to hit. You literally have a free, no cooldown dash on your primary fire, so you better make use of it. The ability to weave between enemies in the battlefield is one of the hardest but most rewarding skills for an Iron Fist. And I'm really happy that this change allows you to use that more. That said, do not get baited into permanently fighting tanks. This will cost you games. Yes, you do more damage versus tanks and less versus squishies, but tanks are also a lot easier to heal and keep up and also have mitigation abilities. You can farm ult charge on tanks, but so will the enemy healers. Your main goal should always be to secure kills for your team, and you still have amazing mobility and burst damage to get that done. With your dashes, jumps and blocks, it's incredibly hard for enemies to get you off their backline. And if things go wrong, you can just jump back to their tanks with your dashes, or out of the fight immediately to reset, meditate back to 450 health. Your kick will kill just about any squishy under half health, and you have a lot of survivability now, so feel free to just always use it for kills. This is one more reason why I think this is just a mega buff. You can now use your kick offensively all the time. I already showcased the new bug or buff for his ult in the background footage, but I'll explain here as well. When you're using flurry, even when you're not looking at enemies, you can periodically dash forwards. But now with his new ult, he gains far more momentum when doing this. This means you can actually dash over or up and down or besides enemies to make it really hard to hit you while you're going all around the clump of enemies, which allows you to get your block back way safer and keep harassing their entire enemy team while your team gets to attack them for free. It makes him much more survivable in teamfights, as well as allowing him to chase down flyers with even more ease. Alright guys, that was today's vid. Let me know if you have any questions or things you'd like to see from me or even debate me on in this case. I was thinking of maybe actually making a matchup tier list where I go through how to fight versus any enemy and like what I'm most scared of when I go in. Let me know. Bye bye.